And he's down. Hello everyone and welcome back. This is my build guide for the Blade Vortex Poison Assassin that I started Heist with. Since my initial build guide and the start of the league, this build has been enhanced substantially. The tree has changed, the gems have changed, we've reduced the cost of the gear while substantially increasing both survivability and damage. This is now by far my strongest league starter of all time. I hope you enjoy. Blade Vortex is a powerful area of effect spell, dealing both physical and chaos damage. The spell hits enemies all around us, applying poisons 7.5 times per second. We scale this poison damage substantially, utilising critical strikes with perfect agony from the tree, our gem selection, and also Noxious Strike and Toxic Delivery from our Ascendancies, as well as the powerful aura Malevolence. From our Ascendancy, tree, and gear selection, our poisons persist for much longer than normal, and as there is no limit to the number of poisons that we can stack on a mob, the longer they last, the more we can stack, and therefore the more damage we can do per second. And why stop there when we can generate a battery of both power charges and frenzy charges? All of these combine to increase our damage to a staggering 8.6 million damage per second, according to Path of Building. And now onto the defensiveness and survivability of the build. This build is no pushover, utilising multiple mechanics in order to keep it safe. From our third Ascendancy, we pick up Mistwalker, which gives us a 50% chance to gain Elusive on a critical strike. And with a critical strike chance of 76.57%, this is up all the time. Whilst we are elusive, we take 8% reduced damage, and also no extra damage from critical strikes. This drastically reduces our incoming damage during boss fights. Our fourth and final Ascendancy is Opportunistic. This powerful Ascendancy node grants us 20% increased movement speed if we've killed recently, allowing us to get out of harm's way very quickly. In addition, we take 10% reduced damage whilst we have at least 2 rare or unique enemies nearby. This is great for twinned bosses. In the event that we have at most 1 rare enemy nearby, we gain 25% more damage instead, which also applies whilst we clear a map. And we don't stop there. Both our attack dodge and spell dodge chance is at 75%, which is the maximum. Our evasion is at 35% chance, and we utilise the powerful defensive aura Flesh and Stone while in Sand Stance. This blinds all nearby enemies and causes us to take reduced damage from enemies that are further away. All enemies that we've blinded have half the accuracy rating, meaning that our effective evade chance jumps to 70%. This is only 5% from cap, and we could obtain this by more expensive gear, but this is frankly unnecessary, as the build hardly gets hit already. For our final 2 layers of defense, we have a 30% chance on kill to gain phasing, which allows us to run through mobs and not get stuck. And last but not least, we utilise the Ice Fang Orbit Ring. This chills all enemies that we poison, making their attack speed much slower along with their movement speed, meaning they can't reach us quite as quickly. Now let's move on to the gear selection for this build, and let's start with our main weapon. This will be a wand, preferably imbued so we get the increased spell damage. Key stat to look for here is chaos damage over time multiplier. We want as high a roll as possible, the maximum being plus 38%. The next thing I would look for, but this would take the one from a cheap one to an expensive one, is a +1 to level of all physical spell skill gems. And in a perfect world, our final prefix would give us gain X% of physical damage as extra chaos damage. My wand is showing to the left of the screen right now, and you can see it only has one of these stats, purely because RNG has not been very kind this league thus far. The suffix slots of the wand are up to you, but as intelligence and strength is lacking on this build, you may want to prioritise intelligence as one of these slots. Other notables will be mana regeneration rate and increased critical strike chance for spells. Moving on now to our offhand weapon selection, this will be an inexpensive rare shield. My shield is shown to the left. It dropped as is apart from the extra craft we did for the life. You should prioritise life, strength, resistances, and maybe some spell damage. Our helmet is an inexpensive rare, focusing life and resistances, and as much evasion as it can muster. And now onto the chest selection. Here we have 2 main options. The first is a 6-link Dendrobate. This gives us a pseudo 7-link, along with bonuses to both poison damage and poison duration, helping us scale our overall damage. If you can't afford this straight away, you might want to go for a rare chest. This should have at least 800 evasion, and as much life as you can possibly get on it. Use your suffix slots for resistances wherever possible. For our boots and gloves, these are both rares, and both try and fill life and resistances. In addition, the boot should have a high movement speed roll wherever possible. Our amulet is Malagaro's Cruelty. This is used for both frenzy and power charge generation. Furthermore, it scales both our damage with poison and poison duration based on the amount of dexterity and intelligence we have. This is the only must-have item on this build. If you're looking to anoint and you'd like more defences, then I suggest Golem's Blood, Heart of the Warrior, or Discipline and Training. If you want to go all out on the offensive side, then I would suggest Dirty Techniques. Moving over to the ring slots, we'll use one of these to cover Strength Intelligence, along with Life and Resistances. We can repeat this in the second ring if required, although I highly recommend Icefang Orbit for the chill on poisoned enemies. This ring also has a role to cause explosions in the name of poisoned enemies you kill with hits shatter. Unfortunately, this doesn't proc very often, and this is because most of the time our poisons kill our enemies before we hit them again. But when it does proc, it's very satisfying. For the belt, we want a rare leather or Stygian Vice. As per usual, we're going to prioritise as much life as possible and then fill any resistance holes. No build will be complete without talking about the flasks. Our first flask is a life flask. Get immunity to bleed on it, that's about it. Our second flask is Witchfire's Brew. This increases our damage over time during the flask effect and grants a level 21 Despair Curse aura, cursing everyone around us. Any mob cursed with Despair will take more chaos damage. Next we want a Quicksilver Flask with anti-freeze on it. Then we go for an Aziri's Promise. It massively increases the chaos damage dealt by Blade Vortex and therefore the amount of chaos damage on our poisons. But it also grants us some nice survivability in the form of chaos damage leeches life. This supplements the life regen we get from our Ascendancy, which grants us 0.5 to life regen per poison on an enemy that we kill. This does not appear to have an upper limit, and therefore scales indefinitely. Taking up our last flask slot, the Corralito Signature. At first I overlooked this flask because it had drawbacks, but also it gave us something we already had on our tree in the name of Perfect Agony. However, after someone pointed out in the YouTube comments that this may be really useful, I plugged it into Path of Building and was astounded to find it gives us over 1.5 million DPS, and so it had to make a place on this build. Now if you paid attention to the gear popping up on the left as I went through the gear, you'll note that all my gear is very cheap and nowhere near its maximum capacity. This means that with the correct investment, this build can scale way beyond the 8.6 million DPS currently shown in my Path of Building, which uses all my current gear. If you do have cash to burn on this build, then please let us know what DPS number you get to. It'd be very good to hear from you. As always, I will leave the paste bin for the Path of Building in the description below. Please note that I use the community edition of Path of Building, and so the original version may not work. Now then, do we use jewels? We do indeed. Currently using a medium cluster jewel, a Viridian jewel, and a Crimson jewel. My cluster jewel adds 4 passive skills. One of these is a jewel slot, and the other 2 notables are Brush with Death, which gives us plus 10 to damage over time multiplier, recover 1% of life on kill, and recover 1% of energy shield on kill. The second gives us Circling Oblivion. This is 25% increased damage over time, and 25% increased duration of ailments on enemies. This applies to our poison. Ideally on the normal jewels, we would go for the increased global physical damage, life, and plus 4 to chaos damage over time multiplier. But these could prove to be rather expensive. The jewels I'm currently using I picked up. The cluster jewel on the other hand was purchased from the market, and this was 25C. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, and that's our gem links. For our main 6th link, the main gem is Blade Vortex. This is a physical damage spell which creates ethereal blades which orbit in an area around you, dealing damage every 0.6 seconds to all enemies in their radius. As more blades are added, the damage becomes greater and more frequent. Now whilst we can use this skill from level 12, we're not going to switch over to it until the end of Act 4, and this is because we'll lose quality of life if we do, and which will slow us down. You want to try and get this to level 21 to maximise the damage. As some of you no doubt know, in this league they introduced alternative quality values on gems. The best one for Blade Vortex is the 1% chance to create an additional blade per quality level, which gives you 20% chance at quality 20. Our next gem of choice is Deadly Ailments. This causes linked skills to deal 64% more damage with ailments at level 20, but causes the skill to do 10% less damage with hits. Moving swiftly on to Swift Affliction. This causes supported skills to deal 44% more damage over time, but cause a 15% reduction in duration of supported skills and damaging ailments they inflict. For quality of life, and this will be our 4 link while levelling, we will utilise Unleash. Periodically this generates seals. These seals can be used in order to multicast Blade Vortex. So we intend to wait until this builds up 3 seals, hit it, and we'll get 4 stacks of Blade Vortex. Now note as well that this also causes skills to deal 11% less damage when reoccurring. This does not apply to Blade Vortex, where all the damage is calculated off the first blade. Our penultimate link is Unbound Ailments. This causes 34% more damage with ailments, as well as a staggering 64% increased duration of ailments on enemies. And last, but by no means least, is Vile Toxins. This causes supporting skills to deal 5% more damage with hits for each poison on the enemy, up to a maximum of 9. This is a total of 45% increased damage with 9 poisons. It also causes supported skills to deal 49% increased damage with poison. Now onto the Aura gem links. Our auras are Clarity, for the increased mana regeneration. Don't level this beyond level 5. We then have Malevolence at level 20. This causes nearby enemies to take 20% more damage over time, and gives us 19% increased skill effect duration, increasing the length our poisons live for. Our last aura is Flesh and Stone. This blinds all nearby enemies, halving their accuracy. This effectively doubles our evasion rating. For quality of life purposes, we support all of our auras with Enlighten. This reduces the mana reservation. If you can't afford this jewel straight away, and you're not lucky enough to drop it, then take the Charisma wheel on the tree just below Perfect Agony until you can. This gem only needs to be level 2. Moving on to our cast when damage taken links. We use a pretty standard cast when damage taken at level 1, linked to Immortal Call at level 3. Added into the mix we have a Val Cold Snap. Now the Val Cold Snap cannot be triggered, however the Cold Snap can. This is here for when we're in maps where the enemy has a chance to avoid being poisoned. This will prevent our ring from chilling the enemy, and therefore Cold Snap takes over. As an additional bonus, we can hand trigger Val Cold Snap when we come up against bosses, increasing our damage. Don't level this above level 7 or the Cold Snap will not be triggered by cast when damage taken. Our final link is Culling Strike at maximum level. This allows Cold Snap to kill any enemy below 10% life, also granting us an additional source of Frenzy Charge generation. Our last 4 link isn't a 4 link at all. Currently my boots are completely unlinked and contain Val Righteous Fire and Val Grace. Val Grace gets us to dodge cap, and Val Righteous Fire increases our spell damage. The last 2 slots are currently unused, and you can do with these what you will. I intend to put a portal in one of these. Just as an important reminder, Val Righteous Fire is intended to be used only in the Val version. Using the normal version will likely get you killed. For this reason, please make sure that it is not keybound to your bar. Our weapon and shield links are completely interchangeable. One houses our movement skill, the other our Wither Totems. For the movement skill, we have Flame Dash, linked to Second Wind, and then Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge is maintained at level 8 to make sure it's up each time we cast Flame Dash. This increases our spell damage across the board, with even more damage on Flame Dash. For our Wither Totem, we have Wither, linked to Spell Totem, linked to multiple totems. Casting our Wither Totem twice will deploy 3 totems, which will very quickly stack up Wither stacks on a boss. Do not underestimate these totems. Deploying them against the boss can mean a difference between a slow kill and a really rapid kill. Wither massively increases our poison damage when it reaches maximum stacks. It is now time to move on to the Bandit Choice for this build, with my recommendation being to help Alira, especially if this is your league start. The mana regen per second, the 20% global crit multi, and the 15 all res massively help to support this build. If you do have a problem helping outlaws, then at a push you could go for the 2 passive skill points. Onto the Pantheons for this build, and we're going to take Solar Lunaris for the physical damage reduction and increased movement speed, as well as the other defensive modifiers that you get once you upgrade the Pantheon. And please do upgrade the Pantheon. I keep forgetting, don't make my same mistake. For the minor Pantheon, I select Soul of Garakan for the increased movement speed and the plus 5% chance to evade if I've taken a savage hit recently. Although I highly recommend changing this out, as the need requires, such as when you want to offset the burning floor. For our Ascendancy, we choose Assassin. Our first node is Noxious Strike. This increases our damage over time multiplier for poisons, gives us 40% chance to poison on hit, 50% increased damage with poison, and 5% increased poison duration for each poison you have inflicted recently. It also massively improves defences with recover 0.5% of life per poison affecting enemies you kill. We then take Toxic Delivery second, giving us 10% reduced damage taken from damage over time. Poisons we inflict with critical strikes deal 50% more damage. 0.4% of critical strike chance per poison affecting enemies up to +2, which very rapidly stacks up to 2. Gain 20% of physical damage as extra chaos damage against poisoned enemies. For our third Ascendancy, I suggest Mistwalker. Mistwalker gives us a powerful version of Elusive, which grants us increased attack and cast speed, not very useful for us, 8% reduced damage taken while Elusive, which is quite a big thing, 25% increased effect of Elusive, and we take no extra damage from critical strikes, which is a massive thing for survivability. And finally, we move on to Opportunistic. The 20% increased movement speed if you've killed recently is very, very good for quality of life, and clear speed. Damage from our critical strikes cannot be reflected, allows us to do physical reflection maps, although these still are painful. It also grants us 25% more damage while there is at most one rare or unique enemy nearby, and 10% reduced damage taken while there are at least 2 rare or unique enemies nearby. So that's great for defences. On to win bosses. Onto the tree. First I come out here, grab the life, grab the extra life, go upwards, get growth and decay, get written in blood, get Doomcast. I then come down for phase acrobatics, get these life nodes, get perfect agony, go around to the Scion life wheel, and then we continue on down here and up here once that's complete. Our cluster jewel comes off here. Now note that these projectile damage doesn't do anything for us, it's just the most efficient node in order to get this cluster jewel out. If you don't want to use cluster jewels, there are other alternatives to get. The level 100 version of this tree can be found in the paste bin in the description of this video. For leveling the build, I pick up Caustic Arrow at level 1, supplementing this with Toxic Rain at level 12. Caustic Arrow I link to Pierce and Void Manipulation. For Toxic Rain, I link this to Blast Chain Mines and Swift Assembly. If I do have a spare link while leveling, I'll go for Void Manipulation. Once we reach the end of Act 4, we pick up Unleash as a reward, and then we can switch over to our Blade Vortex setup. This build can be levelled with pretty much anything. However, if you're not using it as a League starter, normal levelling gear will increase the speed at which you can level it. Before the end of Act 4, consider using a Silver Branch, which will drastically increase the power of Toxic Rain. I do have 2 videos showing Act 1 and Act 2 levelling for this build. You should be able to find these on my YouTube channel. And with that, our build is complete. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching, and catch you next time. You've been watching Altec2K. Thank you for watching.